Fight fans, welcome to the PBC Podcast, brought to you by Premier Boxing Champions with your host, Kenneth Bouhairie and Michael Rosenthal.
Welcome, everyone, to the PBC Podcast. I'm Kenneth Bouhairie.
And I'm Michael Rosenthal, editor of USA Today's Boxing Junkie.
Thanks to all of you for joining us after a week off. We're feeling nice and refreshed. Me in particular, Mike, because I just coming off a pretty interesting trip to Montreal. Have you ever been there, by the way? I love Montreal.
Yeah, I've spent time. I have friends there. I've spent some time there. Yeah, it's really, really great. So you don't want to be there in the dead of winter, though. That's the thing. It's unbelievably cold.
Yeah, it was pretty cold last week. However, the food was great. There's this brunch spot called La Avenue, Restaurant La Avenue or something like that. It's my favorite brunch spot in the whole world. So I got to go there twice last week. So I'm feeling pretty good. But we've got a fun episode for you guys. Vito Mielnicki Jr. is going to talk about his return on Christmas Day in a FOX PBC Fight Night card. Speaking of which, we're going to discuss his fight as well. Plus, we'll look back at the action on last weekend's PBC card. And in today's toe-to-toe segment, we'll name the top 5 fighters we want to see Deontay Wilder return against. But first, let's talk about what everybody else is talking about. The problem child. Jake Paul has done it again. Saturday night on Showtime pay-per-view, the rematch versus UFC legend Tyron Woodley. Their first fight ended in a split decision for Paul, but this time he came to close the show in emphatic fashion, and he did just that. I mean, everybody's seen it. It went viral. The one-punch knockout in the 6th round. Mike, this was Paul's 5th pro bout. I know it's a funky question, but what do you make of him as a fighter?
Seems pretty obvious to me. He's still just a raw beginner, which is why he's fighting other guys the guys he's fighting aren't very good either. That said, I do believe that he's working hard to improve, and obviously he can only get better. And we have to acknowledge that he's really good at marketing himself, and he has the flair for the dramatic. A highlight reel knockout like that only makes him even more attractive to those who follow him. So he's bigger than ever right now, I think.
Yeah, I think so as well. I mean, it was a nice move setting up the knockout, the fate, and so forth. So definitely see some improvement from him as a fighter. But then again, you consider the opponent, and you kind of wonder where he goes from here. But is this hurting or helping the sport of boxing, in your opinion?
Well, my standard line is that it neither helps nor hurts the sport. I think the audiences are just different. Paul's fans are those who follow him on social media. I don't think genuine boxing fans really have that much of an interest in him beyond, curiosity. It's hard to gauge how strong that curiosity is. I'm sure it's there, but I don't think they really care that much about him. That said, Paul's fans, are seeing real fights on his shows, every time that he, steps into the ring, like Amanda Serrano's fight, for example. She sort of like hitched her wagon to him, which might not be a bad idea. Maybe some interest will develop as a result of that. I don't know, but I still kind of think that they're just two separate audiences. Eventually he'll go away and it'll just kind of go back to the way it was.
It's interesting. I used to think that. I don't think that anymore. I see him mentioning names like Canelo, and obviously Canelo doesn't need the promo. Gervonta Tate Davis doesn't really either. But the more he talks about these boxers, the more that audience gets to know who these boxers are. And I think he's done a lot for Amanda Serrano and for women's boxing in general. With what he's doing, I think it's helping the sport. I mean, he is because whenever he speaks, these guys listen, and he talks about boxing and real boxing a lot. I also think that he's on the right platform. I say that because, I mean, look, this guy's first fight was on DAZN, and I remember when it first occurred, everyone was like, it's just a fad, it's gonna go away, and the viewership wasn't really there. Then his next fight was on Triller, but he's really taken it to another level with Showtime. And these fights are getting bigger and bigger. We'll see. And I also think that it would help if they had some more boxing fights on their card, some bigger names, some better names. That would certainly help. How long this is going to last, I'm with you. I really, I don't know. I mean,
you know what? No matter how long it lasts, we should look back on this and just think the guy was brilliant to what he did. I mean, he knows. He's a smart guy. He knows it's not going to last. He's going to lose at some point.
Will he?
He
will.
Fighting,
depends on who he fights, right?
I thought it took a little bit of guts to take on Woodley again because he could have lost the first.
That was
fight.
A tough first fight. Yeah.
So he's got some huevos. He's got some guts. So eventually he's going to have too much guts and he's going to lose a fight. Now the question is, does he continue after that? I don't know. I think this kid's got a lot going on. A lot of things in his head, a lot of plans. I can't imagine he's going to be doing this he already said something about losing his short-term memory. He's starting to have problems, which is kind of a strange thing to say because he hasn't fought very much at all. So if that's true, I can't imagine he's going to want to stick around that long. So I imagine this guy's going to be doing a lot of different things in his life, and I think boxing's just one thing right now.
He's going to win some sort of belt that's made up by the WBC.
Yeah, probably.
Retire 10-0 and join Rocky Marciano and Floyd Mayweather's undefeated champions.
Don't even say that in chat. Makes me sick. Okay.
Who hung up the gloves? We'll see what happens. But enough of the problem child. Let's move on to the PBC Fight of the Week. Your stomach will probably be full, your pockets probably a little lighter, but thank God for Fox PBC Fight Night Saturday night on Christmas Day. Welterweight prospect Vito Mielnicki Jr. fighting in his native New Jersey against Rhode Island's Nicholas DeLomba at Prudential Center. The action on Fox begins at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and we begin here, as always, with the essentials.
Okay, here we go. Once again, Mielnicki 9-1, 6 knockouts. DeLomba 16-3 with 5. They're actually both 4-1 in their last 5 fights with 3 knockouts, exactly the same. Mielnicki's coming off a second-round knockout of Noah Kidd in July. DeLomba lost a unanimous, actually shutout decision to Richard Hitchens, who's pretty good, almost 2 years ago. So he will have been out of the ring, I think it's 22 months. Mielnicki 60%. Did I say? Yeah, 22 months. Mielnicki 60% knockout percentage. DeLomba 26. Vito's boxed professionally 33 rounds. DeLomba 106. Vito is 19 years old. DeLomba's 31. Vito turned pro in 2019. DeLomba 2013. Both fight from an orthodox stance. Here's where Mielnicki has an advantage. He's 6 feet tall. DeLomba's 5'8". 70-inch reach for Mielnicki, 71, which is an interesting dimensions for DeLomba, if that's accurate. Mielnicki grew up outside of Newark, New Jersey, which is the site of the fight, and DeLomba's living in Kissimmee, Florida right now.
Very, very nice. Now, before we get into the fight itself, what are your thoughts on having a boxing card on Christmas Day?
I say why not? Other sports, mainly football, have done it for years with success. I think that's part of. I think sports are just part of Christmas for some people, and it just kind of has a special feel to it. Being on Christmas, this is like something different, which is always interesting to me. So I'm thinking that the card's going to do pretty good ratings. It's a good chance for people to see a good, well-schooled prospect in Vito Mielnicki. So I think it'll do well.
Yeah, I like it too. It's something to look forward to in the evening. You mentioned the NFL, the NBA as well. I mean, why wouldn't you take advantage of the holidays as other sports do? I feel like we need like a day, where like a Boxing Day, like December 26th. That could be.
I don't know why anybody hasn't done that already.
Yeah, I shouldn't have put that out there, but I mean something like that. Plus, I love a hometown attraction like Vito being featured here. Speaking of Vito, this will be his 4th fight this year. He had the loss to James Martin in April, bounced back with the KO win last August. What would you like to see from him on Saturday night?
I think this is the kind of solid but limited guy that Mielnicki needs to outclass if he's as good as I think he is. He's in the main event on national television in his hometown. This is a golden opportunity to make a big statement, whether that's boxing this guy silly or better yet delivering a memorable knockout. And we have a gauge based on DeLomba's last fight. He was, as I mentioned, he was shut out by Richardson Hitchens, who's a good fighter. Can Mielnicki give that kind of performance? We'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, he'll want to end this year on a positive note, a second straight KO win, as you mentioned, although that may not be easy against a spoiler like DeLomba, who's been in there with guys like Richardson Hitchens. Stylistically, how do you expect this fight to play out?
DeLomba isn't particularly quick or powerful. He's not going to dance around the ring or anything like that. He's just a solid offensive-minded fighter, which I think means he's going to be there for Mielnicki to hit. I imagine that Vito will take his time, outbox DeLomba early, and then start landing some big bombs, which might not end well for DeLomba.
Yeah, you're probably right. By the way, in our standings, do you have a pick for this fight? I wasn't sure. I think it goes without saying that you're picking Vito Mielnicki, no?
Yeah, I think.
Or do you want to end the year?
Yeah, losing in the standings. Yeah, that's the kind of thing. Listen, I don't want to disrespect. He's a solid guy, DeLomba. He's a tough guy. He knows how to survive, as he proved against Hitchens. He was stopped one time, but it was way back in 2015. That's what Mielnicki punches harder than Hitchens. I think Vito's either going to catch him with a big shot or stop him with an accumulation of punches. So I think he's going to actually get a knockout. Yeah,
I think he gets a late round stoppage as well. I think Mielnicki makes the statement that he wants to make here. Real quick regarding the standings, we're tied 33-11-3 coming down to the wire. Now, don't forget, guys, that Fox PBC Fight Night will be preceded by FS1 PBC Fight Night on a night that features a lot of good prospects, in my opinion, some future champions. But let's move on. We've been talking about him. So why not hear from the man himself? He'll be headlining in his home state of New Jersey Saturday night on the Fox PBC Fight Night main event, Vito Mielnicki Jr. Vito, you're in the main event on national TV in a special Christmas telecast in front of your hometown fans. Could you have had a better showcase than this?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I want to thank Al Heyman. He's definitely blessing me with great opportunities to show my talent on the biggest platforms. Obviously, I mean, like you said, I'm going to be in my hometown. I'm going to be in front of my family, friends on Christmas night in front of a huge audience on TV. And, yeah, I couldn't ask for a better opportunity to showcase my talent in front of the world. So I'm just blessed.
Now, is there any added pressure given that you are fighting basically in your backyard and in the main event on Fox?
No, I don't consider it pressure just because I feel like, I mean, this is where I belong. This is what I've been working for since I'm 7 years old. And to have this opportunity, like you said, in the main event on Fox on Christmas night with a projected viewership of 9 million people is something I've been working for my whole life. So I'm just going to go out there and be me and put on a show for everyone.
Oof.
That's awesome. Vito, we saw you get introduced and shouted out during a hockey game at the Prudential Center a few weeks ago. What was that like for you?
Yeah, definitely. It's cool. I mean, because I used to go to a few hockey games when I was younger and stuff like that, and the Prudential Center is very supportive of me. Obviously, we're trying to make that my home, my backyard in New Jersey. So promoting the fight there, putting me on the big screen, it was cool. We had my whole team. We had a suite there, so they're very supportive of my career, and I hope I can do plenty more shows in Newark, New Jersey at the Prudential Center in the future.
Very good. So this is your first scheduled 10-round bout. Is that a big deal or no?
Definitely. I think at 19 years old, being in a 10-rounder is definitely a big deal. Being main event at 19 years old on Fox, it's definitely a big deal just because at my age you don't see many prospects doing what I'm doing. But no, I'm just so ready for the moment, and I'm so prepared because we had a great camp that it didn't matter if it was a 10 or a 12 round or whatever it may be, 8, 6, I'm ready for it.
Did you do anything different this camp, or was it pretty much your standard training camp for a fight?
Yeah, I definitely think we sparred a lot more. I think we got in like 150 to 160 rounds of sparring in the 8 weeks. And, yeah, obviously we raised the rounds in sparring. I guess the intensity, you could say, just because you're a main event, it definitely went up. I believe we had a great training camp, 3 a-days, 2 a-days, waking up early in the morning, going running, going to bed late, working out late. Definitely just put in the work, and like we always do. But so we're just ready. We're ready to put on a show.
You've had an interesting year, obviously beating Noe Lopez, the upset loss to James Martin, then bouncing back to stop Noah Kidd. What would you say you've learned so far?
The most important thing I think I've learned throughout that low point of my career is that proper preparation prevents poor performance. And me going into a fight not prepared and actually being before I walked to the ring that night in my first career loss, my legs, I already felt defeated because I wasn't prepared. I wasn't at my full potential. And coming out of the ring that night and knowing that I couldn't be the best version of myself had to be the worst feeling that I've ever felt in the sport of boxing. So the most important thing from that low point of my career is that I learned to always be prepared for any fight in any moment.
DeLomba is a solid opponent, obviously. What challenges does he present based on what you know?
Yeah, I know he's definitely going to bring his A game. He's going to be prepared, and he's a very rough kid. He's been in there with a lot of tough opposition. He's coming to fight, and it's going to be fireworks that night. I'm going to put on a great performance.
What advantages do you feel you have over him specifically?
Speed, power, my youth, and I think my ring IQ is a lot better than his. I mean, just those three important aspects of the fight, I think, are going to be a huge part of the outcome.
Now, we saw DeLomba against Richard Hitchens. Hitchens beat him by shutout decision in DeLomba's last fight. Did you watch that match? And if so, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I've definitely watched that matchup. I actually brought in Richard Hitchens for some sparring before his fight with Hawkins, and he came in to spar with me. So we did about 20 rounds this camp because he had just fought last week. And, it was great competitive sparring. And obviously we exchanged words about the opponent and stuff like that. And like I said, we're fully prepared for whatever DeLomba brings on Christmas night.
Are you saying we can expect you to dominate DeLomba like Hitchens did, or what?
Yeah, absolutely.
I like that.
Yep.
I'm just curious. You guys are on a similar path. Could you see yourself maybe fighting Hitchens one day?
I wouldn't. To be honest, he's 140, right? He fights at 140.
Yeah, but he's fought above 140 in terms of weight, though. But you're right.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, he's fighting 140 right now. I'm fighting 147 and still growing. So we'll see if our paths ever cross. But I've known Africa, Richard Hitchens, we call him Africa in the amateurs, my whole life. And I mean, if our paths cross in the future, so be it. But for now, he's a great friend of mine throughout the amateurs.
That's great.
Very good. So do you have a specific prediction for the fight?
Yeah, I mean, the prediction for the fight on Saturday night, I'm going to dominate the fight. If there ever comes a time where I could get him out of there, I'm definitely going to try and get him out of there. He's only been stopped once in his 3 losses. And I know Nick DeLomba is going to bring his A game. I'm going to bring my A game, and that just brings a great fight. So everyone tune in. You don't want to miss it on Christmas night. On Christmas night, we're going to give you a great gift.
Nice.
Looking forward, assuming everything goes well in this fight, looking forward, what can we expect from you, or what are your goals for 2022?
Yeah, I mean, right now, obviously, I'm going into a main event at 19 years old. I still don't believe that we're in any rush. We're obviously building a platform with me at the Prudential Center, and I want to continue to do that in 2022. Just continue building my fan base around at home, keep filling the arena at 19 years old, and just keep growing, keep getting better as a fighter, mentally, physically stronger, and just keep leveling up.
Every fighter obviously thinks about, every young fighter obviously thinks about fighting for a world title. Do you have any sort of timetable in your mind? Or you just sort of taking it one step at a time?
Yeah, I would say by the time I'm 22, 23 years old, I could definitely see me getting a world title. I'm not in a rush though. Just this isn't a sprint; it's a marathon, and we're definitely getting better each and every camp. And like I said, I'm gonna keep learning, keep going to get good sparring around the country, sparring with top pros, and just keep getting better.
Very good. Vito, we know you have a fight in a couple of days. We know you're really busy, so we appreciate you taking the time to be with us.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you guys for having me. And I'm always happy to come on here and just talk to you guys. Whenever.
This is home. Vito. We appreciate you coming out. Looking forward to enjoying our Christmas with you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, guys.
Nothing says Christmas more than the sound of a bell.
Oh, down he goes!
Vito Mielnicki Jr.
One of the most exciting young fighters. Crowd on their feet now, chanting for Vito.
Takes on Nicholas DeLomba.
They put on a show.
Christmas Day at 8 Eastern on Fox and the Fox Sports app.
All right, it's time for the week in review. Last Saturday on Fox PBC Fight Night, undefeated Cuban sensation David Morrell Jr. delivered another performance that had folks wanting to see him against the best at 168, even though this guy's a 23-year-old prospect. Morrell dazzled, stopping veteran contender Alantis Fox in 4 rounds. Mike, how did you see his performance?
I thought he looked really good. He fought with really smart aggression right from the start. He was really aggressive right from the get-go, meaning that he was, calculating, not reckless in any way. And he landed almost at will in this fight. Fox, tried to jab. He tried to move in an effort to fend off Morrell, kind of get out of harm's way, but he just couldn't do it. I thought the stoppage was spot on. And you have to remember, Fox is a pretty good fighter. He went the distance with Demetrius Andrade and put Andrade down a few years ago, and Morrell just outclassed him, every step of the way. It was a really, really good performance.
You mentioned the stoppage. You thought it was spot on. Fox certainly didn't think so. But anyway, what do you make of Morrell joining forces with trainer Ronnie Shields? This was their first fight together. I don't know if I saw any real differences, but going forward, what do you make of that partnership?
My gut tells me that it isn't always a smart move to change trainers, but I think in this case, I have a feeling that it was.
Yeah.
Number one, anyone who works with Shields is in good hands. That's how much respect I have for the guy. And two, Morrell's team seemed to make a well thought out decision that he had learned all he could with his former coaches and needed another trainer maybe to take him, just to maybe clean up a few little things or take him to the next level. And Shields has a track record with Cuban fighters on top of that, having worked with guys like Erislandy Lara and Guillermo Rigondeaux. Sounds like he has been and will it has been and will continue to be a good marriage, one that might have already paid dividends in the fight against Fox. It's hard to gauge that, but he looked really good in that fight. Maybe he's better than he ever has.
Yeah, a good point regarding Shields and his work with other Cuban fighters. Morrell's 5-6 fights into his pro career. How far away is he from facing the elite at 168?
Well, you know me, I generally take a there's no rush attitude, but after seeing what I've seen in his last several fights, I think he's more or less there now. Would I put him in the ring with Canelo Alvarez or David Benavidez right now? No, absolutely not. But he could be a threat to them one day soon, and I think he would be competitive with pretty much anyone else right now. I think we'd have to see it to know for sure, but based on what I'm seeing in his background, I think he's right there.
Yeah, he looks special. He looks like he could be special. But I'm with you in terms. I don't think there's any need to rush this guy. I don't at all. Why do that to him? Let him continue to develop. Let him continue to work with Ronnie Shields and take his time. And see where he is a few fights from now. Speaking of which, who would you like to see Morrell face next?
I feel like we keep regurgitating the same guys that we always mentioned, but I might shoot for somebody like Anthony Durrell. Although I know Durrell wants a title shot or nothing, he said. I'm just throwing this name out because it's interesting to me. Maybe Caleb Plant. I know that's maybe reaching a little bit too high for Morrell, but I think Morrell is that good. I guess bottom line for me is I think he should definitely target a top 10 guy. Maybe a guy below. Oh yeah, I think he's definitely ready for that. Maybe a guy below Plant. But you know what? I'm not sure how much depth there really is at 168. So I think he could fight a guy. Yeah, I think he could fight a guy at 8, 9, or 10 who really would have not much of a chance to beat him. So I think a top 10 guy for him. But I guess, I think you're right. I think maybe carefully choose at this point. But once again, I just think he's within a few fights of fighting for a title.
Yeah, I'd like to see him against a Caleb Truex, or I know the John Ryder fight was discussed. Although I hear John Ryder's fighting Danny Jacobs next. So I suppose he's off the table. Maybe a Caleb Truex is a good opponent for him. Jose Uzcategui if he cleans himself up. But I'd love to see him fight Edgar Berlanga in a battle of prospects, but I don't think that happens anytime soon. But I think he's at that level, and I don't think he's that far away from that elite level guys like Caleb Plant and so forth. And like you said, he may just be ready already. I guess we will find out soon enough. Now, in the co-feature, another undefeated prospect, 22-year-old lightweight Jose Valenzuela took a huge step up in class against Austin Dulé, but it didn't look like a step up in class. Valenzuela improved to 11-0 with a fourth-round stoppage win. Before we get into Valenzuela and his performance, Mike, what did you think of the fight and the very interesting stoppage during the fight?
I think that fight was really kind of strange is the word I want to use. Valenzuela just couldn't miss against a pretty good opponent. He landed almost 60% of his punches according to CompuBox, which is kind of crazy, I think. And his body shots were just devastating. You could tell, obviously, by the way that Dulé was reacting. Yet somehow Dulé hung in there and even landed some of his own big shots. The fight was completely one-sided, but it was really fun to watch at the same time. It was a very strange fight.
Yeah, it was one-sided, yet Dulé was game and trying his best to fight him up. But man, Jose Valenzuela, what's your take on him?
You real quick, you mentioned the stoppage, and I didn't answer your question. Then I'll give you my take on Valenzuela. Dulé, was really upset at the stoppage, which I understand. I think he was alert and he was fighting back at that point. But how many times can you go down? He went down 3 times, was it 4 times? And how many punishing punches can you take before someone has to step in and say enough is enough? Nothing was going to change in that fight. He would have taken more and more shots had it continued, and it could have gotten just uglier and uglier. So my thoughts on Valenzuela, this guy is a really good fighter. I love the way he threw punches and bunches. I love the body work. Again, just devastating. He just beat the you-know-what out of Dulé. And Dulé wasn't supposed to be a pushover. He's a good fighter. He'd gone the distance with Diego Magdaleno only a couple fights ago. Valenzuela seems to be developing nicely, working with the Benavideses in Seattle. He's Mexican, but he lives up in Seattle and works with David Benavidez and that group. He has the look of a legitimate contender to me. I really liked what I saw, and he's fun to watch, which I love.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that kid's got the skills. He's got the background. Working with Jose Benavidez Sr. and the Benavidez group. Obviously, there were a lot of rumors about him. I heard about him before I ever saw him because there were rumors that he had stopped Teofimo Lopez in sparring and so forth. I don't usually pay attention to sparring stories. I feel like they should be left in the gym, quite frankly. But there's no doubt that this kid is extremely, extremely talented. Who would you like to see Valenzuela face next?
So I would take my time with him too. I would have him beat up a few more guys like at Dulé's level, which is pretty high level, and then the bigger fights will come. That said, I think he could handle most top 15 guys now. Also, I think he's pretty far along. If I had a criticism of him, which I should have mentioned earlier, is that I don't want to use the word reckless, but I think maybe he was a little bit overconfident when he was attacking Dulé, and he got caught with some big shots.
He did.
Yeah, if he got caught with those kind of shots against a guy who really can bang, he might have been in trouble. So I think that's something he needs to work on. I think I mentioned the same thing about Jaron Ennis. I think these guys are so confident. Yeah. They're so confident. They're feeling so impenetrable that they could end up walking into a disastrous punch. But I think he's ready for pretty much pretty much anybody, although we have a small sample to go by so far. So I guess I would take it one step at a time.
Yeah, definitely one step at a time. I do feel he needs to work on his defense. That's something I always look out for with some of these young fighters. So, but certainly no question he's an offensive powerhouse. The Fox card opened up with another unbeaten fighter, super lightweight contender Albert Puello from the Dominican Republic, easily outpointing Vashon Owens over 10 rounds. What's your take on Puello?
I really liked what I saw. He seems to have a lot of natural ability and a really high ring IQ. Loved his footwork. His footwork was fantastic. He's like a dancer. Loved his defensive skills. He was really, really hard for this guy to hit. I thought he controlled the fight from beginning to end against, a pretty good fighter in Owens. And remember, this was his first fight in the United States. Just some pressure there. And I think he did well under those circumstances. The WBA has him ranked number 1. I don't know whether he'll get a title shot soon, but if I were handling his opponent, no matter who that ends up being, I'd be really nervous against this guy. He's really talented.
Very talented, and I think they should, take your time with this guy as well. As you mentioned, his first fight in the U.S. Obviously, he's the goods, but let him continue to develop and get under him. The champ at 140, Josh Taylor is no gimme, is no pushover. One of the best fighters of the world, in my opinion. But let's see what Puello does next. Now, one performance that stood out on the FS1 portion of the card Saturday night was an undefeated 140-pounder Richardson Hitchens, who won a 10-round unanimous decision over Malik Hawkins. Hitchens, another rising young fighter in the Mayweather promotion stable. What was your take on his performance?
He's like Mr. Consistent. He's good. He's a good, polished technician who's going to outbox pretty much anyone he fights, especially at that level. Because he's still coming up. I thought he had a breakthrough victory over Argenis Mendes last December, and he followed it with a clear, impressive victory over Hawkins. I thought he's going to climb into the rankings soon, so we'll see how he does at the next level. But he has the skill set. There's no question about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, very, very impressive. I love the jab from him, and I love the patience and the poise. Who would you like to see Hitchens face next?
It's funny because it's just talking about Vito Mielnicki and then Richardson Hitchens. It seems like that should be a match, but that won't happen because you don't want two rising young stars like that, young prospects like that, to fight each other. But it'd be a fun matchup at some point. I can see Hitchinson matched against Hitchinson. I combined his name. Hitchens matched against a ranked opponent, though, probably someone around number 15, give or take, or maybe he takes on like a veteran who's maybe a little past his prime, maybe somebody like Robert Guerrero or Victor Ortiz. I don't know. You think he could handle a guy like that right now?
Well, it depends on where he wants the campaign, right? Because this fight was at 147. I'd like to see him do a little more at 140. I'd like to see him fight Robert Easter Jr. Yeah, I like that fight. Challenge. Yeah, I would say so. It'd be an interesting style matchup, but I like it for him. I think this kid has a veteran's composure. So I'd like to see him in against some of the top veterans.
Nothing says Christmas more than the sound of a bell.
Oh, down he goes!
Vito Mielnicki Jr.
One of the most exciting young fighters. Crowd on their feet now, chanting for Vito.
Takes on Nicholas DeLomba.
They put on a show.
Christmas Day at 8 Eastern on Fox and the Fox Sports app.
It's time for Mike and I to go toe-to-toe. And this week, looking ahead to the January 1st Fox pay-per-view featuring Luis Ortiz versus Charles Martin. 5 fights, 5 heavyweight fights. With that in mind, we are going to list our top 5 opponents for Deontay Wilder. Now, the Bronze Bomber is planning to return to the ring at some point in the spring, and we are going to help him figure out who it is he should face next. We're going to go in ascending order, obviously, and I will turn it over to Mr. Rosenthal.
Okay, the only thing I have to say to preface this is that I realize there's quite a few good choices, fights that I'd like to see Wilder have. Anyway, my number 5, Robert Helenius. This would just be a wild matchup between two really tall, offensive-minded, hard-punching guys who always give a good show. Wilder is coming off one of the gutsiest efforts we've seen in years and has that crazy punching power, maybe maybe the biggest punching heavyweight ever. And Helenius is hot right now, coming off back-to-back knockouts of Adam Kovnatsky. I mean, this fight would just be so much fun to watch, which to me, ultimately, as a fan, is the most important thing. And it would end inside the distance. So that would be like a don't blink fight.
Yeah, I like that fight a lot. I mean, they were, sparring partners. They know each other pretty well, and I suspect that that's going to play a big part when they do fight. Helenius obviously be looking out for that big right hand. He's got a pretty good right hand himself, so certainly an explosive fight. I really, really like that. I didn't give Helenius much thought. I wish I did. My number 5 is another interesting style matchup, Frank Sanchez. Now, Sanchez may not necessarily be there at that level yet. Although I do think, he had an incredible amateur career. I think his amateur record was like 214-6, and he's proven that he's levels above where he's fighting right now. I think Frank Sanchez is ready for the top heavyweights, and boy, that'd be an interesting fight if he got in the ring with Deontay Wilder and try and box that guy for 12 rounds. Like Deontay says, you got to be perfect for 12 rounds. I need to only be perfect for 2. Can Frank Sanchez avoid that bomb? I do not know, but that could be a fight that happens sooner rather than later.
Yeah. So I'll give you my number 4, Frank Sanchez.
Oh, really? I wasn't expecting that. Okay.
Yeah. My gut says no, that it's too early for Sanchez to fight a guy like Wilder. Let him get a few more fights against top tier opponents under his belt and then pursue the elite guys like Wilder. I think that line of thinking would make sense to me. At the same time, Sanchez is ranked in the top 5 of 2 sanctioning bodies. One could argue that it's time for a major challenge for him. He's at a point where he's got to have a major challenge. I would pick Wilder to beat him, but Sanchez as you mentioned, is a really good boxer. Maybe as good as anybody in terms of technical skills in that division. I could see him winning that fight. So yeah, it's a really interesting matchup.
Yeah, I like it. And I think with the heavyweights, it doesn't matter. Even if he were to lose against a Deontay Wilder, he could still bounce back and face other guys. And it'd be a learning experience for him. And it happens to nearly all the heavyweights. So why not see what happens? My number 4 is Prince Charles Martin. Now, Martin, of course, is fighting Luis Ortiz in what should be a pretty explosive pay-per-view headline, Fox Sports pay-per-view headliner, Saturday, January 1st, New Year's Day. Martin, a former world champion. He's hungry. We saw him knock out Gerald Washington a year ago or so on the Wilder Fury 2 undercard, and now he's got a tough test in Luis Ortiz. Now, if he's able to get by Ortiz, if he's able to stop Ortiz, I think he puts himself in position for another big fight. Why not against Deontay Wilder? Would love to see the matchup. 2 top American heavyweights, 1 orthodox, 1 southpaw, both looking to land their power punches. Both 2 of the better trash talkers as well. I love that fight.
Martin is not on my list, but I strongly considered him. He almost made my list. He had that bad fight against Joshua where he lost the title that he had. I think he had some issues going in that fight. Going overseas wasn't easy for him. A few things, were working against him. I'm not making excuses. I just don't think he was at his best for that fight. I think he's sort of gotten his, ship righted after that. He looked good against Gerald Washington. I think if that guy's on, he's actually a pretty good heavyweight. I kind of lean toward picking him over Luis Ortiz. And if he wins that fight, I think that he could, he'd be in a stronger position to fight any of the top guys. But yeah, I think him and Wilder would really be a fantastic fight. And I think that a Charles Martin who's 100% could be a difficult fight for Wilder.
Yeah, absolutely. Love the fight. Who's your number 3?
So my number 3 is Andy Ruiz Jr. This one is a natural given what Ruiz did to Joshua. Another tall, big punching heavyweight like Wilder. Ruiz laid an egg in his rematch with Joshua, but then he joined the Canelo Alvarez camp and seems to be on the right track now. He's a good boxer with those ridiculously quick hands for his size and his body type. He's got a lot of resilience. He took some huge shots against Joshua. I don't know if he could take the same shots against Wilder. We would have to see. Could he do the same thing could he do the same thing to Wilder that he did to Joshua? I don't know. There would be good storylines going into that fight. So I think that fight would be attractive to pretty much anybody.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I'll get to him in a second. My number 3 is Dillian White. Definitely a fight of the year candidate if he and Deontay Wilder squared off. Somebody said it's getting knocked off. I'm going to guess it's Dillian White's. But the White has been campaigning at a high level at heavyweight for a long time. I think he's underrated in some aspects, overrated in some, but underrated as well. A really, really good fighter. This fight would sell out the frame in terms of pay-per-views, would ignite so much beef between the U.S. and the U.K., and would certainly give the winner a lot of bragging rights. So I would love to see those guys square off.
Yeah, that's obviously a legitimate matchup. I think White may end up fighting Fury, although I think there's some issues and negotiations there, but that might happen. White's a great talker. He's a pretty good, at least a pretty good fighter, big, strong guy. I keep thinking that he got knocked out by Povetkin. What would Wilder do to him? But he's a good fighter and he's a really good talker, so it would be a really fun promotion. So I could see that being an attractive fight.
Yeah, I love that fight. Who's your number 2?
Okay, my number 2 is Oleksandr Usyk. I think this one, I chose this one primarily because Usyk right now is like no worse than the 3rd best heavyweight in the world after Fury and arguably Wilder. If Usyk beats Joshua again, and I think he's going to do that, this could be Wilder's path back to the heavyweight championship. It would be an interesting style matchup, a boxer versus a big puncher. And they're actually roughly the same size in terms of just natural size. Of course, I should mention that Usyk will have a lot of options, assuming he wins the second fight with Joshua. I mean, holding all those titles. Wilder might have to wait in line, but I think it's a legitimate matchup and a fascinating matchup.
Yeah, I love that matchup. Usyk did not make my list. I assume because I want to see him against Tyson Fury. That's the fight I'd like to see more than anything. I love that style matchup as well. But I love him against Deontay Wilder too. Now my number 2 is the guy you mentioned, Andy Ruiz Jr. I love this fight. Winner go home. I mean, loser go home. Winner gets to fight for a world title and get right back into the mix. I think it's such a perfect fight for both guys, and I love the style matchup. Let's see what Deontay Wilder can do with the style like Andy Ruiz, an educated boxer with power in both fists, a really, really good chin, and incredible hand speed, which makes a lot of fighters tentative. I truly I want this fight, but my number 1 is my dream fight, one of my dream fights at heavyweight, so I had to go with that.
Yeah, one added thing about Ruiz. I think the Ruiz who beat Joshua in the first fight. Now he did land that punch to the temple, which obviously started Joshua's downfall. But I think a Ruiz that's 100%, who trained properly. I think that's a dangerous.
It's awfully tough to beat. Yeah.
For Wilder. Yeah. So I think we have the same number 1. I mean, we could say it at the same time. It's Anthony
Joshua. Yep.
Yeah. Titles aside, this is my favorite opponent for Wilder. 2 tall guys with 1-punch knockout power. Also happen to be major stars, worldwide stars. I don't know who wins this fight, which is how it should be. This fight will always be huge, no matter where they stand in their careers. I think just because of what they've done in the past, who they are. Maybe it happens in the UK where the promotion would be just freaking enormous. And it'd be big here too, obviously. I hold out hope that fight happens sometime sooner rather than later, but I think it has to happen at some point.
Yeah, it's the fight we wanted to see for so long, both of these guys, and it was just, it's a fight I still want to see, even though, both have shown, especially now that both have shown some vulnerabilities, are both trying to work their way back up. I don't know if Joshua's fighting Usyk next. I'm not sure what's going on with that. But if it doesn't happen, I would love to see him face Deontay Wilder in a fight where, as you mentioned, the buildup would just be massive. I think it would be the biggest fight of the year, no matter what's going on that year in boxing. Everyone would tune in. All the sports pundits here in America. You'd have Stephen A. going on and on about it. Just a fantastic fight, probably an overdue fight, and one, like you said, that I hope we see sooner rather than later. I hope we see, period.
Yeah, these are all all really fun fights. Wilder could fight anybody. It'd be fun to watch.
Exactly.
But these 5 guys, I guess we mentioned 7 guys. Any of these guys would make for, and I could think of more. If you told me to pick another 5, I could pick another 5. So yeah, I look forward to him getting back in the ring.
Yeah, we can't wait to see the Bronze Bomber get back. Can't wait to see more heavyweight action January 1st, Fox Sports pay-per-view, Luis Ortiz versus Charles Martin. And that is going to do it for this week's show. Be sure to like and subscribe and comment wherever you found this week's show. Want to thank Vito Mielnicki Jr. for joining us. Don't forget, Saturday, Christmas Day, Vito Mielnicki returns on Fox PBC Fight Night. Lots of good fights on Fox and FS1 Saturday evening, so make sure you don't miss any of it, and make sure you don't miss our next episode where we talk more boxing, get more interviews right here on the PBC Podcast.